Alright, so Hunter and I are in the garage, or in the shed I should say. We are going to build the case, the crankcase today. So obviously Hunter just had the crankshaft there and the two crank halves. So I'll just get some oil ready. So I'll just get Hunter to pause the video for a minute. So what I've got here is just 2-stroke oil that you mix in your fuel. That's going to get in the bearings anyway, so that's what I'm going to lube all the bearings up with. Just a tiny little syringe, as you can see, just to put a little bit inside all the bearings here, just to make sure that they've got a little bit of lube in them. Remember, these have all been cleaned. I'm going to put a little bit on my finger, and we're going to put a bit on this seal here. So this is the flywheel side. We're going to do that side first. And obviously on your crankshaft, the way you tell your flywheel side from your clutch side is the flywheel side has a keyway in it. Okay, so I'll just pause that while I get this ready. So obviously the flywheel's going to go in here. Actually, I might put a bit of oil on the shaft as well. So just like that. I'm not even interested in oiling the bearings on the crankshaft yet. Do that in the middle. Just want to get a little bit of oil on there. Clean rag over here. Okay, so we're just going to start this in here. Now these are a press fitting, so I've had to make a special tool up to do this. So just sliding it in there as far as it'll go like that. Okay, and I'll just get Hunter to pause it again just while I get the tool that I made on. Okay, so I've just made a tool out of a bit of 16mm all thread. And all that tool's going to do is press against the case with the nut, obviously, and that will bring the shaft in a controlled way. So it's just pulling against the case and pulling the shaft in. So I'll just do this for a little bit. I'll get Hunter to pause the video again and I'll show you once the shaft's in. Okay. So the flywheel side of the crankshaft's about halfway on. I'm just checking it for making sure that the seal is still intact, which it is. So what I like to do is just stop sort of halfway, give it a few turns just to make sure that it's not hurt or sticking anywhere, and then I'll carry on going. So just pause the video again. Okay, so the really important part on this, obviously, is making sure that your actual conrod doesn't get pinched on here, because if it does, you'll end up messing your case up, and you'll also end up damaging a whole lot of other bits and pieces. Now I'm just going to just readjust this, make sure that my shaft is getting pulled in square, like that. There we go. Just take your time with this piece. This is the hardest part of the job, but it's the most critical part also. You can hear that, that's just pulling in the bearing. You'll feel it stop, that's it there. So now I'll just back this off, like that. Wind the tool off. We made by this. Drop our spacers out. Check the seal. Seal's all intact. So that there is the flywheel side done. Okay, so we'll pause the video just while I get ready to do the output side. Okay, so what we're going to do now is just put a very, 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 very thin bead of high temp sealant on the steel. Yes, it's got a gasket. The gasket is just here, but I like to put a bit of high temp sealant when I'm doing these gaskets. So obviously it's going to go on really, really thin. In fact, I might even just squeeze that out a bit more like that. Yep. So it's just going to be a very, very thin bead. And I'll rub it in with my finger in a second, because I've got to get all these mating surfaces here. The idea with this is we don't want to have any air leaks at all, because if we do, you're not going to be able to tune or run your saw properly. The other thing too is that's your oil tank, so you definitely want to make sure that your oil tank is sealed up. Okay, so that's on there, so I'll just give that a quick thin out like that. Just going to rub it on. Obviously, yeah, you wouldn't do this on your car. You'd let it skin up. This is not a car, this is a chainsaw. Okay, being careful not to get any on crank surfaces. That would be a bad day. Like that. Obviously a little bit around there. Don't want to miss any spots. A little bit here. Doesn't matter if you get it on the joining pins, the actual alignment pins, because that's all they are, is they're alignment pins. Alright, so that's coated liberally. Then what we're going to do, right, so that's coated on there, haven't missed any spots. Just going to get that little bit out of there. Just want a bit two nuts in there. Alright, then what we're going to do is we're going to get our gasket. Okay, gasket obviously it can only go on one way, but the gasket gets installed on the side that has the alignment pins. So we'll drop that onto the alignment pins there. In fact, I think I missed that spot there. That's alright, we'll get a little bit onto the gasket around there. Like that, so we'll just sit our gasket on there. Now careful when you do this, because you've got to walk it down the pins, unfortunately. So that's it, that's all in place. The other beautiful thing about doing it this way is the gasket goo, sealant, whatever you'd like to call it, is going to hold the gasket in place while we have to do what we have to do. Okay, so we set this side for now, and we do exactly the same thing to the other half, and I'll get Hunter to pause the video again, and we'll come back after that. Okay, so we've got our gasket glue on this side, so what we do is we just carefully... Oh, hang on, I know what I forgot. That's okay, we can keep the video going, but I did forget to put a little bit of oil in this bearing. And we'll oil that up so we don't have a dry start. We'll put a little bit of oil on the inside of the bearing and all the way through onto the seal on the back. Okay, so that's that, and we'll put a little bit of oil on the shaft that we're working in, which is around here, because that's going to need it. Just a little bit of two-stroke oil. Oops, didn't want to get it on there though. Just like that. Alright. I'll mop up any excess in a second. Alright, so now, yeah, so we've oiled the bearing. We've put our gasket compound on, which is a bit of 3-bond, high temp. It's the grey one. It's oil resistant and high temp. So now, just being careful, we have to get the shaft in, and we have to get our alignment pins in also, which is a little bit of a pain in the bum, but we'll get there. And the other thing we've got to do is get that oil pickup filter up in there, out of the way, just while we're doing these two halves. Okay, so what we do now is we put our spacers on that we made earlier. They can go on there, like that. And we get our tool. So for the output side of the saw, the thread is what I call a unicorn thread, at least in this country anyway, because it's a left-hand thread, right? And the tap is a fine thread tap, which for a 12mm is not standard. It's a M12 by 1. So what we're going to do is just get this started enough to get the alignment pins in, and then we'll go from there. So I'm just going to put my little back in that I made. I'll just get Hunter to pause this while I get this started. Okay, so
what?
Basically after a whole lot of finagling with the tool that I made, I would suggest if you are going to make a tool to make one up that's a little better than the one I had. You'll see that the shaft is not centered. Now at this point you can give the shaft a little bit of a gentle knock with a wooden block and a hammer, because it's already through the bearing. So I'm just going to do that now and then I'll come back to you.